So now to get under, so then I go down to my rabbit hole begins, right? So we start with the one video with the seven, the densities.
Huh.
Okay. So, I know I'm in kindergarten. We all are in this third density.
Yep.
But I want to explain that to my listeners because you're right about that. Because once that is understood, that's when that rabbit hole goes, because you want to know, oh my gosh, I get it. That little bit, then you can, it goes beyond. But I think for people that first learn about the law of one and meet you and learn that video and watch that video and learn from that, that's really, I'm looking around, like I have really, I don't react. I do live like you were just describing. I get in the car to go pick my girls up and this is amazing. Like I live that way. Everything is that way. And I look outside, I go on my run this morning, listening to you. And I'm just like, it's in the dark and I'm running my dogs. And I'm thinking, gosh, my little dogs are getting ready to move to the third density. But everything just changes, the trees and the rocks and the birds. So when you start to tap into those seven densities and understand that is when I really feel that magic changes. It really does.
It's like an awakening experience.
It is. So can you give your, there's a lot I want to talk about. I don't want to take up, we could be here all day, but
I'll try to give a super quick overview. If you know what the chakras are, then you have a leg up on understanding the densities, right? Because the densities, you could think of them as the chakras of the universe, in a sense. They are the 7 layers of experience that consciousness evolves through as it progresses through evolution and reincarnation. So the law of one says we all begin as pure matter in the first density, correlating to the root chakra: earth, water, fire, air, and space. And the law of one says consciousness experiences a few billion years of that interaction until we know eventually microbial life begins to form in the ocean. And then, insects, plants, animals, fish, everything in that spectrum, everything that has growth and movement that can interact with its environment. That's the second density of consciousness, which correlates to the sacral chakra. And then we get to the third density once the attribute of self-awareness evolves. And that happened for human beings. No one knows how long ago, maybe probably a few 100,000 years ago, maybe millions of years ago. But it's that point where, in my theory, is it would be somewhere around the advent of language. Whenever language began to be used, that's the labeling mechanism of the mind, where we start making noises to refer to objects, right?
Right.
And at a certain point, once that language system, it probably started with once we were, ancient hominids, ape-like creatures, probably like guttural noises like apes make.
Right.
And slowly that evolved into more complex sounds. And at a certain point, the apes would have made noises to refer to one another, because that's also very helpful, right? You all get a name, so we can all just make whoever's name we want and get that ape's attention to do something we want. So at that point, I think, is probably when self-awareness happened, because once I'm given a name, then the mind can kind of do this about face and flip in on itself and then becomes an object to itself. And that's when the ego is born. That knowledge of I exist, I am. The mind begins to hijack that I amness and then put it on labels. I'm this person, I'm this body, I'm this story character. I want this, I'm thinking that, I'm feeling that, I'm doing that. So that's the third density, which I don't know if I've said in a video. You made the comment a second ago, consciousness kindergarten.
Right.
If I did say that, that's not as accurate as it could be. I think third density is more like consciousness junior high school.
Oh, okay.
Because consciousness kindergarten would be like first or second density, right? You're learning your ABCs.
Right.
What is awareness? But third density, just like junior high, is the most challenging period of one's soul's evolutionary journey. Because in third density, the whole point, Ra says, is that we are here to choose a polarity, positive or negative. And so we spend probably hundreds of lifetimes reincarnating as a human and experiencing the darkness and the light in life. And it's supposed to be this way. It's supposed to be challenging because it's supposed to force you to make a decision, because there's a lot of suffering in this density level. Okay. So you either say, I'm so tired of suffering, I want freedom. I have to choose the path of love. Love is my freedom, my salvation. And that is what allows the soul to evolve towards fourth density, which is the awareness of oneness or unity consciousness, where the mind, the consciousness has evolved enough to say, okay, yeah, it's true that we're in separate bodies. Third density would be the belief in separation. Mm-hmm. It's true that we're in separate bodies, sort of, but it's clear that we're all one essence. We're all the same energy, just knowing itself in a million varieties. So let's love one another. Let's get along. Let's work together. That's going to make a much better world for us than this third density world of tribalism and warfare and separation. So that's the period that we're in right now, Ross says, of making this transition from a third density planet to a fourth density planet.
And wait, so in 2012, sorry, but 2012 is when this Earth went from 3 to 4, right? To Correct. The fourth density.
Yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, the Mayan calendar thing.
Right.
Kind of speaks to each density has a certain period of time, Ross says, that it lasts for. Planetary cycles, you might think of it. And Ross says third density is incredibly short compared to all the others because it's so intense. So the creator is very merciful in that sense, that it doesn't make us stay here for millions of years, but just about 75,000, Ross says. 75,000 years is about how long it takes for the Earth to become magnetized to fourth density.
Okay.
And so we're in 2012, we hit that point of our third cycle of 25,000 years, right. Finishing third density, which means now our planet has to be magnetized to the next density level. Ross says, like the striking of the hour on a clock. So you can see that in our planet, right? We're clearly trying to learn these lessons of oneness and unity and healing all the separation on our planet. But these are tough lessons. It's like a planetary shadow work that we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So so now we're into the fourth density.
Yes.
But see, when you talk about that, I feel like where are you in the fourth density?
Well, so the fourth density is literally a physical phenomenon where the photons vibrating at that density level. So density, if we could back up a second, density refers to the amount of light in a given space. So if I have one photon that vibrates 100 times a second, and then another photon that vibrates 1,000,000 times a second, this one's going to have a lot more density of light, obviously. Right. So that's the nature of evolution. As the more that the photon increases its vibrational speed or velocity, the color spectrum changes, like a color wheel, kind of bleeds into the next color. So we go from yellow into like a lime green yellow, and then a darker lime green, and then a true color green. So we're just at that point of beginning that light lime green color, I think, just beginning to step into it. But in my own spiritual evolution personally, yes, I can begin to integrate fourth density consciousness. And that actually can allow me to begin activating fourth density energy in my body, which we typically call Kundalini Awakening. Right. When that energy surges up the spine to the crown chakra, you're literally activating the green ray body or becoming a fourth density being living inside a third density body, which is pretty amazing.
And you learned the Kundalini from Dr. Joe Dispenza, or how did that come to? Because I was listening to that and how it's in your spine, it's in your root chakra.
Correct.
And you do breath work. You do a Kundalini exercise and it gets through your third eye. And that is when you are experiencing the fourth density.
Yeah, it's have you watched the video I posted a few weeks ago about the graduation test?
Probably. I've watched so many right now. My head is
It's the one where I lay out the calibrations of each density.
Right. Yes, I watched that
one.
Yes.
So using the David Hawkins scale of consciousness model, Hawkins maps third density consciousness from 0 to 1,000. So my question was, well, what do the other densities calibrate at? What's their spectrum look like? And when calibrating them with 3 separate people who do calibrations, startlingly enough, all 3 of them gave me the exact same results, which blew my mind. But it was like, I can't argue with these results. And the way that the results came back were that the 4th density begins at 1,000, obviously, like the color wheel bleeds into the next one, but it ends at 5,000. So 1,000 represents the highest energy level a third density body is capable of producing in consciousness. And that's the level of the avatars like Buddha, Christ, Krishna, Zoroaster, Babaji, etc.
Right.
Very rare that someone activates the highest potential. Most of us, let's say if you're not spiritual at all, quote unquote, you're probably around 100 to 200 or somewhere in there, and maybe even lower than that. In the spiritual community, I would say most people are probably between 300 and 500. And then very advanced souls are above 500 into the 600s or 700s. So the average person is still 3 to 5 times below the highest level of possibility that's available here. And 4th density begins where Christ ends, right? So that tells you how much more energy we're dealing with. And they have the potential to go all the way up to 5 times the amount of energy of a Christ or a Buddha. So that energy is extraordinarily powerful compared to the one we're normally used to in 3rd density. Mm-hmm. It requires the nervous system to be cultivated and prepared for it. Because if it's not, you've probably heard, examples of people who have Kundalini awakenings. Right. And it can either be an incredibly transformational, blissful experience of God union, or if somebody sort of awakens it on accident, which does happen, it can be a very traumatic and difficult experience that leaves them in a kind of state of psychosis, because Ra talks about distortions, right, in our chakras. Mm-hmm. If I'm a super unhealed person, and I mean, some people literally fall off of a horse or off of a motorcycle or down the stairs, and something that if it hits the root chakra just right on that cerebrospinal fluid, somehow, I don't know, it activates the Kundalini. And it just exacerbates all the distortions in their body. So every trauma, every fear, every self-hatred, all of it will become manifest by 3 to 5 times. So people literally have to go to the psych ward sometimes. And this is very rare, but it does happen. So that's an example of why the nervous system needs to be prepared, right? We have to open it gradually through breath work, through Kriya Yoga, which is how I started learning about this, through the teachings of Yogananda, that we have to pull prana into the system, and kind of through the breath work, we can sort of milk the Kundalini gently and start to gradually push those distortions out and allow awareness to see them and forgive them and heal them. And Ra calls that spiritual balancing in the Law of One. So at a certain point, when the nervous system is prepared for it, the state of what we call enlightenment just begins to manifest. And we could say that enlightenment is the beginning of 4th density consciousness.
So when Jesus and Buddha, they all reach that 1,000 at that level.
Yes.
So now, how do you look at that as where they are now?
Mm-hmm. So the level of energy that is produced in consciousness is limited to the vehicle that you're in. Ra says that every soul that incarnates in the universe has to have a body of some kind. So all the 7 densities have some kind of body. But the higher up we go in the densities, it becomes more and more a light body, right? So 4th density is this hybrid between 3rd and 5th, where it's like still partially a chemical vehicle, but it's also partially pure electromagnetic energy. And we know that our bodies are also full of electromagnetic energy. That's how life operates. But 4th density is, 5-10 times higher than the average person would be conducting right now.
But still in a body.
In a body, yeah. So yes. The 4th density body, you could think of it maybe like if you've seen the movie Avatar, probably much taller and longer, less dense, heavy, density in terms of like heaviness, more translucent, more bright. You could probably see light glowing from their skin a bit. And as we get to 5th density, that's when you become a pure light body. And I think my assumption is because there is this activation that has to happen in the third density body to activate fourth density energy.
Mm-hmm.
My hunch is that every density has a kind of Kundalini activation like that, where the next density level's energy at a certain point in that spectrum, you're ready to start activating the blue ray, and then the blue ray starts flowing through. So that's just a hunch. Ra doesn't say that, but based on the teachings of the law of one, it would make a lot of sense to me if it worked like that.
Right. So continue from so we know the fifth, now go through the sixth and the seventh density.
Yeah.
So we can understand that.
So fourth density correlates to the heart chakra, the density of love. Fifth density correlates to the throat chakra, which is the density of wisdom. And even the name of the throat chakra in Sanskrit is Vishuddha. And Vishuddha in Sanskrit means total purification. Shuddha, purification. V means total. So it represents wisdom or purification of mind. So the fifth density is the density of wisdom or light. And then the sixth density correlates to the third eye chakra. And that is the density of unity or balance, the law of one density, where the soul has to achieve a perfect balance between the heart and the throat, love and wisdom, masculine and feminine, which is a very difficult balance to strike, apparently. Mm-hmm. Sixth density, I think Ross says, is 75 million years in length. And once you become a light body, apparently the body no longer needs to experience physical death. So you just have one body the entire time it takes you to make it through that density level. Okay. And then the body's
you're not going back. You're not going back to third density once you get to sixth.
That's true. Unless you choose to reincarnate as a wanderer, then you can go back. Yes.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to explain that. But continue, and then I want to go back to the wanderer.
Yeah, the wandering, we'll definitely get back to that because that's an important point. So then the last density is seventh density, which correlates to the crown chakra. And Ra calls this the gateway density. They don't know much about this density level. They do know that at the sixth density level, which is where they are, Ra being the being that's being channeled in the law of one, you have to become the higher self at that level, where you kind of turn back in time and serve as a guide to all your previous lifetimes. And that's part of your own evolution to get you from the end of sixth into the start of seventh. And at the start of seventh, you kind of have 1 foot in the source, 1 foot still in the universe, and you're kind of, pulling the two together and trying to merge them together. And then once seventh density is completed, no clue how long it lasts. I would imagine it's longer than sixth density though. Then that's a full cycle of one whole universe you've evolved through. And Ra calls that 1 octave because like a scale on a piano has 7 notes on the musical scale. When you hit that 8th note, that's the next octave of the note you started from. And Ra says that's how the universe works, or even the color wheel, right? Once you go through violet, it goes back to red again.
Right.
So it's this never-ending cycle of universe after universe, big bang and explosion and implosion. And Ra calls that sort of the heartbeat of the one infinite creator, which has been going on for eternity and always will be going on for eternity.
Right. So going back to the polarity and the choosing the self love, the self-ish, or being the positive or negative.
Right.
And how the wanderers come back, and I want you to go there because when I think of after, it made me look at who I look around, like you were talking about being at Starbucks or something, and I'm looking at some people in a whole different way now. Yeah. And I, it's like, I'm there. What is that? What's going on in that energy, and I do that at the grocery store a lot, but not now to the extreme of what I do now after being with you for the last month. But when I think of, just people that I've had in my life that, they're negative, narcissistic, this like, oh, so heavy. Mm-hmm. And I think, okay, they're choosing the negative path. And then will you explain that? Because that really helped me.
Yeah. So what you were getting at is that Ra calls the positive polarity the service to others polarity. And the negative polarity is the service to self polarity. And there's a caveat that service to others doesn't mean you no longer serve yourself or do anything beneficial to yourself. You just serve others like a martyr or something. That's not what it means. Ross says all service is ultimately service to self, because when I love you and I serve you, I'm imbued with happiness and love, and I polarize as a result. So it benefits both of us to be on service to others. But the service to self path is the exception, that one serves the self at the expense of another, meaning I take from you, I manipulate you, I deceive you, I control you to benefit me at your own cost. So that's the negative path of separation. And so we're here to choose between those two paths. And Ross says, in order to graduate to fourth density, you have to choose a polarity. And so the question is, well, what's the point where the source decides you've chosen? You've made that choice. And Ross says it has to be, for the positive path, that you are at least 51% or more service to others oriented. So a simplistic way you could see that is, if you were faced with a simulation of an experience of some kind where you could either choose to help somebody else or forget them and help yourself, a plane crash and the masks drop or whatever, and you're freaking out. Do you put your own mask on first, or do you help the little kid next to you? If you do that 51 out of 100 times, the source says, all right, this being has chosen the positive path.
Love that.
But with the negative path, it's not that way, because the negative path is essentially the exact opposite of the creator's nature. It's all about separation and exclusion and selfishness and greed. And the creator, as Ross says, is pure love and light and unity. So because the negative polarity is serving an important role in the universe, which is to show what the opposite of the creator is like, one has to be almost 100% negatively polarized to graduate to a fourth density negative lifetime. So it's actually 95% or greater. So even souls now that are very selfish and greedy, they're probably not actually going to be negatively polarized. It's very rare. I think less than 10% of souls in the universe graduate to fourth density negative, because it's so hard to sustain the negative polarity. The negative polarity is built on entropy, which is a thermodynamics term, which means lots of chaos and disorder. And the positive path is built on harmony and unity. So it's a lot easier to sustain on an evolutionary path. But with that being said, in third density, both are equally difficult. And you might go, well, how is that true? That's no way that's true. It's true because we have something called the veil of forgetting in third density. And this is why we don't remember our past lifetimes. We don't understand that we're souls on a journey. We just arrive in these bodies with absolutely no reference point of where we just came from. And Ross says that's done on purpose by the logos, or the source, because it doesn't want us to know what game we're playing. Because if we know what game we're playing, that might infringe on our authentic choice between the polarities. So because the source wants us to choose whatever polarity our soul naturally gravitates towards, it's sort of like, I like the analogy of if you and I are playing a virtual reality game, and I say, oh, let me in that game. I'm going to make all the right decisions. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to do so well. And you're like, all right, Aaron, let's see what you're made of. And then I get put in the game, but I don't remember anything before the game, kind of like a dream. I'm just there playing the game.
Right.
Let's pretend the game is about being kind and loving, and people are being rude to me and I'm being rude back. And I just fail big time. I'm a jerk. I'm an asshole, whatever you want to say. I leave the game and I come back, and Ashley's like, Aaron, what happened, man? You said you were going to do so well, but you totally failed. And then I have this kind of come to Jesus moment, right? Where I'm like, I guess I'm not as spiritual as I thought I was. I really thought I would be loving if I was placed in that environment. So I'm like, let me go back. I got to have another chance. I got to pass this game. That's what the soul is doing here. It's taking chance after chance, lifetime after lifetime, until it makes the right choices. And so that's why we don't remember anything here, and why we have to naturally grapple with love and fear, unity and separation, until our soul is fully convinced that either one of those paths is what I'm really looking for.